A Giants podcast for Giants fans
by Giants fans.
It's Shaun Morash.
On the sideline, into the end zone. Touchdown, Giants!
From the offseason to the wins and the losses, it's time to take one Giant step.
Welcome into One Giant Step. I'm Shaun Morash. He's Bryce Gelman. Bryce, there is a lot to discuss coming off a bye week for the Giants, but first I must ask you a question from the Riddler. Are you ready?
Unfortunately, yes. Yeah.
How much does it cost to get a pirate's ear pierced?
What are you even referring to? I don't.
You going to take a guess or not?
I don't know.
Question again, how much does it cost to get a pirate's ear pierced?
Shaun, it's 9:45 in the morning. I woke up 45 minutes ago.
If I were really the Riddler, you'd be dead right now and a bomb would have exploded.
I'm not good with this.
The answer, of course, to how much does it cost to get a pirate's ear pierced is a Buccaneer, who the Giants will see on Sunday. Giants and Buccaneers from MetLife Stadium. Thank you. Welcome again into One Giant Step. Download and subscribe everywhere podcasts are available. Brycey, for a team dead in the water at 2-8, they say, what's there to talk about when you're doing a little podcast on the New York Football Giants? There's a lot to talk about. So here's how this is going to work. First of all, let me set everything up here, okay? First, thank you for listening, downloading, subscribing, interacting with us on Twitter. The viewership and listenership of this podcast has grown exponentially this season, and we thank you all for coming aboard, sticking with us, or if you're a new listener, welcome on in. First of all, selfish, personal reasons. Big weekend coming up for the Giants and Buccaneers. Big weekend coming up where you can get a lot of my content and coverage. First of all, if you've purchased tickets to Boomer and Gio Live, I'll see you out there Friday night, the Paramount in Huntington, Long Island. Saturday morning, myself and John Schmelk, 7 to 8 a.m., taking your calls live, previewing this, talking about all the weeks. So if you want to make a live call, tune in 7 to 8 in the morning, Giants only, me and John Schmelk on WFAN, free on the Audacy app, Big Blue Kickoff Live. Sunday, after the Giants game ends, I'm going to jump back over the boards. I'm going to do one of those hour-and-a-half extended post-game shows into Sunday Night Football on WFAN because Tommy DeVito's starting. So I'm going to get back in, take your calls on that. All of you guys leaving the MetLife parking lot, want to call in, great. And then me and Bryce are going to drop, obviously, a pod at some point after this game, Sunday night, Monday morning. And then remember, next week, Thanksgiving, which means an earlier pod to preview that game. And when me and Bryce are able to drop a post-game pod, me and him are going to discuss that off air. So just understand it's one of those, hybrid weeks with a Thursday game coming up for the New York Football Giants. But that sets everything up. Here we go. No game last week to react to. Giants announce on Monday, Tommy DeVito will reclaim his throne as the Giants starting quarterback like we saw around this time last year. And I have to say, Bryce, before we get into what's good, what's bad, and what's all of that, my overall feel, and this is just natural, it's not overthinking it, like my gut feel when I heard this was, all right, I'm juiced up to watch Tommy DeVito play quarterback.
Oh, my God.
I am. You're not. Now, hold on, Bryce.
No.
Hold on. Think about this. You're saying no. Think about this. Daniel Jones cannot and should not play quarterback for the New York Giants. We've been calling for this for weeks and weeks and weeks. Some have been calling it for years and years and years. If the Giants were going to make a change, and they had to make a change, I don't make any proclamations that Tommy DeVito's a great quarterback. Drew Lock does nothing for me. He drove me nuts watching him play in that fourth quarter versus the Philadelphia Eagles. I didn't love the signing to begin with. At a bare minimum, forget wins and losses, Tommy DeVito's interesting. And I'm tired of being bored by the New York Giants. So my gut reaction is I got 3 doors to choose for a quarterback. This is the door I want because at least it's interesting. You don't like it? Tell me why.
I want the boring. Feed me the boring. Feed me absolutely nothing. I have gotten to the point now, Shaun. I've been calling for this, I think, for 4 or 5 weeks now. I saw the writing on the wall. I saw the fact that Tommy DeVito eventually would become the starter. We'd get the exact same thing we got as last year. And to be quite honest, Shaun, I'm so done with the Tommy DeVito stuff. I had enough of it last year. Listen, I went to Syracuse. We talked about it last year. Essentially, my freshman year, had to deal with Tommy DeVito. So this is not something new. This is now the third go-around with Tommy DeVito. I'm done with the guy. I'm done with the manufactured hype that will surround him, that will surround this team, that will surround the locker room to give them the false hope that they will be able to do anything in this regular season to eventually, potentially advance into the postseason. It's over. Let's just get it on with. I cannot sit through any more wins that mean nothing. Shaun, I can't do it. I was excited last year.
I might have done that with Drew Lock.
No, because Drew Lock sucks. Okay,
right?
They paid the guy $5 million.
You might win a game or two with Drew Lock anyway. Now that Daniel Jones is out,
I think you win more games with Tommy DeVito because you cannot replicate the idea of the entire locker room buying into something. That is what wins you games. What have we seen from the Giants defense over the course of the last 4 or 5 weeks? They've checked out. Dexter Lawrence got his 9th sack and said, you know what? I'm done. And I get it. I understand why there's nothing to play for. He said that. He said that. He actually called me and said, Bryce, I'm done. I give up. But no, in all seriousness, this team needs to have something to play for. I get it. I understand. That's why you go to Tommy DeVito. I understand it. Doesn't mean I'm going to like that. Doesn't mean that I support that.
Well, hold on. Now, there's also football sense to this. First and foremost, I said this about the Carolina game, right? This is the last preview pod we did was the Carolina game that I kind of felt like the Giants had to win that game to really assure that Brian Daboll was coming back. And I've always been steadfast in this, so I'm going to be consistent. There is tanking and losing to get the quarterback, and there's also what helps the coach stay. To me, I am scared to death of John Mara firing Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, and I know that is plenty of people want Schoen gone, and I understand there's a resume for that, and if Schoen's gone, they're going to hire a new coach too. If you're going to draft a quarterback, and I have my pick of the litter on a quarterback or like a head coach I want, like going with the rookie quarterback, if the roles were reversed and Brian Daboll is being let go somewhere else, I am telling you, like if Brian Daboll had the year he had in 2022, had the resume with the Bills with Josh Allen, but that year in 2020 was with some other team and he's had a bad 2 years and he was let go by another team. If the Giants are making a coaching change this year and drafting a quarterback, Brian Daboll would be at the top of the list of the guys I want to hire. I want to make that very clear.
Yes.
This isn't just like I'm afraid of making a change. No. Brian Daboll is the guy I want, like you saw with Tommy DeVito last year, like, by the way, in hindsight, what he did with Daniel Jones in 2022. And, he did help Josh Allen. You can poo-poo it. Josh Allen's taken off after. I want to see Brian Daboll with a rookie quarterback. How do I assure that? The best way to assure that is Brian Daboll can't lose out probably. Is it 1 win? Is it 2 wins? We'll talk about this next week. I think the important one's going to be national television Thanksgiving game versus the Dallas Cowboys, not being embarrassed there. It's going to be big.
Yeah.
So, to me, the best course of action where I think Brian Daboll keeps his job is probably Tommy DeVito looking decent enough at quarterback. That doesn't mean I want them going on some kind of run where they win 4 or 5 games and play themselves out. That's not what I'm saying. But also, the team itself, the locker room needs to stick together. The locker room, you want boring. The locker room doesn't want boring. These are still guys fighting for their jobs, and Tommy DeVito is going to give them a little of that. So I look past the Italian hand gestures and all that stuff. And by the way, let me add this too. On Wednesday, and I'm glad we did this, Bryce and I discussed, for those of you listening, again, thank you for listening, downloading, subscribing, when to tape this podcast because of the Tommy DeVito news. And we originally talked about Wednesday. I said, well, let's see if anything comes out of practice. I'm glad we waited. We're taping this on Thursday because we got to hear from some players, including Tommy DeVito. And Tommy DeVito, and this is on the SMY Giants account, we played it back on Evan Atiki, specifically was asked about, last year and carrying over. And he himself sounded like a changed quarterback from a year ago. Not that he won't have fun, but the idea of, hey, I had a lot of fun with all that fame stuff last year, but the focus here is solely on football and everything. Dude, feed me that. You've matured as a quarterback where you're saying the right things and not just, going to pizzerias and signing autographs. And I think that's critical. And I think this is key for an important reason, Bryce. And again, I'm asking you to hear me out. I'll let you respond. Joe Schoen has been dragged this week since the Tommy DeVito signings being elevated has been brought up because of the idea of handing Drew Lock $5 million.
Yeah.
Look, if Daniel Jones didn't rehab properly or didn't come back strongly off the ACL, if he got hurt in the first couple weeks, they were going to go to Drew Lock, right? We are now approaching December football here. Drew Lock's a free agent at the end of the year. Daniel Jones is gone at the end of the year. This is about evaluation time. I'm not going to crush Joe Schoen for giving Drew Lock the money. You never needed to use him those first couple months. To me, you also signed Drew Lock because you didn't want to hand Tommy DeVito, who's basically doing this, that, and the other thing for all the fame appearances, a backup quarterback job and feel like he's not going to push himself. The presence of Drew Lock, and we've heard about how tight they becoming friends, I believe there's something to that where Tommy DeVito knew he needed to mature a little bit, build off what he had last year, and now he's getting a chance to prove and show it. Does that mean that Tommy DeVito takes off and becomes the future quarterback of the New York Giants? No. I mean, there's like a 3% chance that could happen, but no. What it tells me is, do you want to pay another $5 to $10 to $12 million on a backup bridge quarterback with a rookie next year and blow more cap space like that? Or Tommy DeVito shows enough that you're like, you know what? He's never going to be the franchise quarterback we need, but this could be a really good backup for us that knows our system. And if we need to start him to start next year, if the rookie's not ready or the rookie gets hurt for a couple weeks, we know we can constantly lean on this guy. That is so valuable in a 17-game season to a football team, as unsexy as it is. Your quarterbacks are it's hard to stay healthy a whole year. You sprain an ankle, you're out 2 weeks. Groom Tommy DeVito to be that guy, and you don't have him at such a high cost. This is why I'm all in, and he's saying the right things. I love this, man. And I'm excited to watch the game Sunday. I'm excited to see what Tommy DeVito does. He might take 1 million sacks. He might throw a couple picks. But I'm bored to death with Daniel Jones, and Drew Lock would have just been like watching Mike Glennon again, where you know that the quarterback's not going to be here next year and he stinks. So I'm in, man. And I love the maturity from him. You
said this exact same thing last year.
And look where we are. And boy, was I right.
You were right in the fact that they should not have given the money to Drew Lock. They should have listen, what you saw from Tommy DeVito last year is that he could have been a competent backup quarterback. It was fun while it lasted, those 3 games.
Isn't your job to win games? And I know that they got a lot of turnovers defensively. Or your job, I should say this. Your job as a backup quarterback is to not lose games. Don't turn it over a bunch and whatever. But he had those moments. So
I get that. I get that.
And by the way, you have listeners listening, Bryce, right now who are pumped to watch the Giants again and are here because DeVito's back.
I get it. No, I completely understand. I see that side of it. I'm just burnt out. There's no other way to explain it. Am I more excited to watch the game? Yes. But did I want to see Drew Lock first? Did I want to be bored out of my mind watching Drew Lock instead of Tommy DeVito? Yes, I did. Because you paid $5 million to back a quarterback, you're not going to play him now. And by the way, you brought up this changed mindset and attitude. You know who's still his agent? You know who's still in his ear? Shaun Stellato. You think that guy's changed in a year? You think that guy, after a win, the Giants beat the Buccaneers this Sunday? Watch what happens. Watch. Bryce. There's going to be lines down the street at Bubba Coos Burritos in Livingston, New Jersey. There's going to be lines out at Joe's Pizza in Manhattan.
Bryce, you want a little insider info here on One Giant Step and how wrong you are? With all due respect to Shaun Stellato might handle future free agency stuff, like that side of the agency stuff, and he's basically a glorified mascot at this point. Tommy DeVito and media relations and appearances is signed through my same agency, Max Entertainment, okay? He changed his representation on public appearances at the end of last year after basically he was getting killed for all the appearances. Remember that whole pizza mishap and everything? And our guys over at Max, specifically Max, who I know well, has handled Tommy great. So now, yes, am I coming out of this little homer? Max is, Tommy's part of my team. He doesn't know he's part of my team, but he's part of my team. Yes, he is. So while you see Stiletto handing out turkeys with DeVito's dad and all that, he's having fun. He's a glorified mascot. He's not actually, though, the one anymore handling these appearances. And any appearance you see him have is basically well thought through. And I hate to say this, with a more professional approach than what Stiletto was doing. So I do think he's in much better hands this go around. So, and not many
with the media appearances, but still, like, that whole vibe surrounding it is just going to become so toxic so fast.
I don't think it's toxic. I think it's just silly, and silly could be okay. But Tommy DeVito himself is telling you,
silly.
So what? The cameras are going to find Stiletto and his stupid hat. That's not what Tommy DeVito's doing.
And Drake May. The silliness screwed you out of Drake May and Jaden Daniels. It can't happen again. I understand it's under no one's control. Like the idea of him coming in and getting the entire locker room to support him and to come together around him. I get that. It's not in their control. Like it wasn't last year. But I can't deal with it. I cannot deal with losing out on a top 3 pick in this draft. I can't do it.
I don't think DeVito is going to win like 5 games here. I mean, if they have 4 wins and they're picking the top 5 of the draft.
You see the top of this draft? You see how many bad teams there are? 1 or 2 wins could take you out of the top 3.
All right, so Bryce, I agree with you, and this will be like for other pods beyond the preview pod.
Yeah.
But I'm not convinced the quarterback is going number 1 overall in this draft.
I agree.
Not.
I agree.
Travis Hunter very well might be. I think this is going to be much different. Like last year, it felt like the top 3 players in the draft period were quarterbacks. That's not necessarily the case here. I think there's going to be a little more flexibility. And while everybody drools, and jury's still very out on Bo Nix, just remember, you could still get a quarterback pick in 6th in this draft. Like you could find your guy, and you could also have more trade-up opportunities instead of teams that need quarterbacks. And we'll see. Raiders, Titans, Browns, those are big ones to keep an eye on ahead of the Giants. But let's just take it one game at a time. I don't think this Giant team's about to rattle off 5 straight wins. They might win a game or 2, but you think all those other teams are losing out too? I don't know about that either. So just deep breaths. Now, I do want to get into the locker room portion of the program here because I'm a little frustrated, Bryce. All right. Dexter Lawrence had a chunky soup, whatever appearance that he did. I thought he spoke from his heart, and Daniel Jones was part of his draft class, and I think that's great to defend your friend. But when you say things like, he's the QB1 on this team, the coaches made a decision. I know Dexter kind of backtracked the next day on Thursday. There's defending your friend, and then there's like not being real. And this team, and Dexter Lawrence knows well, is stuck in a losing way / losing culture. They did make the playoffs 2 years ago, fine, and that meant a lot to these guys, and Daniel Jones was their leader and everything. This is still a business, and yes, the money and the injury clause is a part of what's going on right now, even if the team doesn't admit that. The locker room knows that. Darius Slayton loves Daniel Jones. It's okay to love Daniel Jones, the person. He works his ass off. It didn't work out for Daniel Jones, the great quarterback. Also, he is going to walk away. Rookie deal, too. But this recent contract with $82 million guaranteed in his pocket, Daniel Jones is going to be fine. And Daniel Jones is going to land somewhere as a bridge quarterback / a backup. He's not done playing football. And like Daniel Jones will start another game in the NFL. And like, believe me, he will. We've seen much worse Drek do that. Yeah. He's fine. This idea that any players are speaking, it's like they don't know how to handle themselves with a benching, which almost like bothers me. I wasn't paying close enough attention to Denver or the Raiders when Derek Carr or Russell Wilson, how players reacted. But like, my God, guys, get a grip. And I thought, and this is probably the best. Kayvon Thibodeau yesterday, Bryce, comes out and says, "Hey, when we're 2-8, you got to expect changes, and changes are on the line for everybody in all the jobs." And this is Kayvon, who's about to come back. I'm excited to watch him play on Sunday from his wrist injury. And here was Kayvon in year 3, who was really ascending before the wrist injury. By the way, everybody wants to rank Killjoy Shane draft picks. This was a guy who was coming alive in his 30 years, done a lot. I'm pro Kayvon. I heard that quote from Kayvon, and I've seen the stuff from Slayton and Dexter Lawrence. I said to myself, I'm signing Kayvon Thibodeau, man, because all that nonsense we talked about with his immaturity, bro, he sounds like he gets it. Like this,
he's the voice of reason.
He's the voice of reason. You want to hear that. That's the right answer to have. Yep. So it's a very mixed locker room right now, Bryce. But overall, I want to hear more Kayvon Thibodeau answers on this. Hey, love Daniel the person, but bam, we're 2-8. Everybody's job should be in the line. I love that because it's the truth. Yeah, I mean, and you see a bunch of conflicting reports out there. One of those, I forgot who it was. It might have been Jordan Schultz got a call from an anonymous offensive player. I'm going to give you a little piece of advice. I'm going to give you a little piece of advice on Jordan Schultz. I think Jordan Schultz does a good job. Jordan Schultz has a lot of player connections because Jordan Schultz comes from a family of money. And if you don't know, do the research on where Jordan Schultz comes from. And that's why he hasn't really gotten like a big time insider job. He's a player ass kisser who uses his like money and fame in his family to get around players. Jordan Schultz, I've seen it. Others have seen it, is super tight with Daniel Jones. Goes to Knick games with Daniel Jones. Takes him along with him. There you go. I don't like, don't reveal your sources. Don't reveal your sources. Sometimes just take a deep breath and understand. People read quotes and don't think about it. Maybe it's because I've gotten too close to the media stuff now where I'm starting to get this more and more. I guarantee you, Jordan Schultz's anonymous source and Giants teammate is Daniel Jones himself. Okay? And look at this, man. Daniel Jones now is also going to be in a rehab redemption tour publicly. He's a laughing stock, and it sucks because he's a good dude. He leans on Jordan Schultz there to put some stuff out so that when, push comes to shove and he's looking for a job in the offseason, well, look how devastated the Giants players were. We got to see something. Come on. Just understand.
It completely makes sense. And I
understand when you see reports, if you're really interested, do a little deep digging on where these things are coming from.
I've never fully put I've never fully put my trust in whatever Jordan Schultz has said, but whenever he does say something, it gets your interest.
I don't think he's making something up, but you got to understand where it's coming from.
100%.
And I would expect, like, oh my God, 40 guys on the Giants.
I expected from Darius Slayton. I expected it from Drew Lock, any one of these affected guys by the situation. But I think at the end of the day, Shaun, the idea that the player, I get it. I mean, Dexter Lawrence is right, though. Like, Daniel Jones was the best quarterback on this roster. I said it all year long. That doesn't say much. The bar wasn't so high for anyone. But I do think that he was the best quarterback, and I think Dexter was speaking objectively. But he could have said what Kayvon said, and I think that was the right answer. Like you said, I don't know. I think above all else, this team is going to struggle when it comes to the idea that this decision was made for financial reasons. I get it, I understand, but it's a business. As Dexter Lawrence said, it's a business, and they said they traded Leonard Williams last year, who was his best friend. He understands it's a business. So then, at the same time, I don't understand why you're saying that stuff about Daniel Jones being about whatever. Like, it is what it is. Let's move on. Let's not make this a bigger deal than it actually is. This is the right move the Giants made. I understand there's going to be some ruffled feathers, as there always is with any move like this. Yeah. Moving a quarterback who was quarterback 1 to quarterback 4. Not even 3, 4.
Because they don't want to hurt Bryce.
Let's
take it a step further. The Giants openly tried to shop him. We all saw it on Hard Knocks, or at least tried to move on from him. Shopping him is the wrong word. The Giants could have very well started the season with Drew Lock as the starter, or even just said, hell, Tommy DeVito's competing. They said all the right things about Daniel Jones. He's our quarterback. And they held on.
Gave him a chance.
They gave him 10 games, Bryce, when they could have said in September. If they could have said after week 1, this isn't going to work out this year. So
after the Bengals game, it could have been over.
Daniel Jones has been given more than enough leash, so I'm not going to lose sleep.
Exactly.
Now, before we get to fantasy reality game picks and everything, we have more questions via Twitter at Bryce Gelman, at Shaun Morash. Want to fire them off, Bryce?
Yes, I will. Let me sift through all the negative troll comments. I think we got one real one.
All right.
Why are you and Bryce comfortable with Shane / Dable for another year? If they draft a QB that puts a lot of pressure on them, because with another losing season, Shane and Dable are fired. It's the same mistake Bears have been making and stunts the development of a young QB.
All right. So I think there's two things here. Number one, this is not the same as the Bears. Matt Eberflus is a defensive-minded head coach. Eberflus was never the coach of the year just 2 years ago, like Brian Dable was. Brian Dable's clearly had more success than Matt Eberflus. So let's squash that this is the same thing as the Bears at all, off-minded.
Yep.
As far as the Shane Dable thing, I'm not an idiot, and I'm not going to just wave the pom-poms. I understand that Joe Shane's general manager tenureship has not been all perfect and all good. He's had plenty of blemishes, and we highlighted that first draft, which, by the way, was still full of plenty of Gelman scouts that landed them multiple offensive linemen that were all failures. Again, we just heard Joe Shane speak in the bye week, and we responded to this last week. Joe Shane himself acknowledged, if you actually took the time to listen, he was probably drafting to plug some holes early on, and that was the wrong approach. He knows the mistakes he made early on. Now we piggyback to this year, okay? They had this whole thing set up. Instead of doing the reach for a quarterback thing when they didn't get their guy, they took Malik Neighbors. I think we can all agree, good move there. And we know what this draft class has produced. And for the first time, Drew Phillips, by the way, looks like they've actually hit on a third rounder. I'm leaning on the positives of last draft and that Joe Shane has seen himself evolutionize. I know this is hard for people to imagine. I have done the deep dives on the first two drafts Joe Shane had, and I compared them to other drafts. It's not the worst draft in the league, and maybe that's a low bar in each of those drafts. In fact, the first draft, had more success stories when you consider Micah McFadden coming out of that, what Flott is continuing to emerge as. They're not great drafts. Like, you need more Pro Bowl type players, no doubt about it. But it's not as big a disaster as everybody makes it out to be. Now, Hyatt stinking, and Deontay Banks is the whole key to this whole thing. If Banks is truly awful and becomes like a flame out buck, can even be a number 2 corner, that's a hard. I would argue that's worse than Evan Neal, because at least you had the Kayvon Thibodeau hit in that first round of the first draft.
No, it's nowhere near. It's the 7th pick versus the
Hold on, you at least hit on
23rd, 24th pick. Banks.
I'm talking about the idea. At least you had 2 first rounds. You hit on one. To not hit on any first rounder, which is what would happen with Banks, is a tough one.
Arguable.
And that's fine. Whatever. Neither here nor there. That's a bad one for him. However, free agency also matters. Everybody, I hear this argument drives me nuts. The two best players in the team are Gettleman guys, Andrew Thomas and Dexter Lawrence. A, correct. B, let's see, Malik Neighbors could pretty easily get there very quick. Who was the guy that found reasonable contracts comparing left tackle and defensive tackle money for what Dexter Lawrence and Andrew Thomas do? They're getting paid a lot of money. They are not the highest paid players at their position. Dave Gettleman would have absolutely made them the highest paid players at their position in each of those. Yeah. Joe Schoen, drafting's a big part of it, building the culture. Joe Schoen's actually been really good in the free agencies. Bobby Okereke, how we figured out that. By the way, couldn't do that unless you figured out the deal with Daniel Jones. The Brian Burns trade. Looking back, he did that after trading Leonard Williams for those pieces. He basically flipped Leonard Williams into Brian Burns, signed him, locked him up long-term. That contract's not crippling. The Giants are going to have cap room at the end of this year. I think he's handled himself pretty well there. Is the secondary still uber thin? Now, obviously, you hope Newman and Phillips are players out of the draft going forward. Sure. And this is the other part of why I want Joe Schoen to stay. I know I'm going really long-winded here. And, of course, the coaching stuff I handled earlier. Everybody's so focused on the quarterback in this draft. That's true. The quarterback's not the only thing they're adding this offseason. They're going to have the cap space for free agency dollars. I just talked about all the free agency stuff he's done, and he hasn't been stupid about it. On top of that, if they don't have to trade up, they're going to be at the top of the draft in the second round and the third round. And if it's anything like what they just did kind of mid-first round here with Newman, or later second round with Newman, and then what they did with Drew Phillips, I'm excited to see what he could do with this draft class plus free agency dollars. And I don't want to bring in a new general manager now who looks at this roster and goes, I'm going to take a year to evaluate everything. Let me just start over on the draft stuff. No, I think Shane he's building something. Yeah. So that's it. And I have no problem giving him 2 years, like this year and then the next year for the quarterback. And then if you bring it and draft another quarterback too, fine. I'm fine with that. I'm in, man. I'm just telling you, I'm in. And then people have gotten stale and tired of bad football and they're blaming Shane for everything. The quarterback's a big deal.
I just think that playoff run in 2022 was the worst thing to happen to both Shane and Dable.
Sure,
I think that
but it also makes me think that Dable can coach.
No, 100%. It's the worst thing and it could be the best thing at the same time. It gave them the false hope that they were able to compete in the future years. They gave Daniel Jones the money, which ended up being one of the worst decisions in franchise history. But it was a decision that all of us would have made 10 times over after watching what we watched in 2022. It sucks, but it is what it is. And I think you look at the 2024 draft, and I wish you and I disagreed on this because it would make for a lot more sexy argument. But we've been in lockstep on this all year long. And I think that it's easy to catastrophize. It's easy to sit here and say, they got to go. Everyone's got to. It's New York. I understand the urge to say that. I understand the urge to need to say it. I get it. I completely understand. I've called for firings of everyone, of all my favorite teams. Yeah. This one I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go to yet. I can't.
This is not Dave Gettleman. This is not a full-blown train wreck at every turn. And by the way, the two best players are Dave Gettleman guys. They're the only two successes of the Dave Gettleman era. Everything else was a full-blown nightmare.
Exactly. And Shaun, you also have to look at the fact that 2023 offseason, they had no money to play with. They had no cap room.
Of course.
No cap room. Zero cap. This last year was the first time they had major cap room. Yes, they signed Bobby Okereke. Great. Terrific. Whatever. Right. He's a good player. He's a solid piece.
And then they figured out Burns. They just got Burns, Illuminor, and Runyon. I mean,
and now they have $25+ million coming off the books. So you're not going to let them try to you don't want to see them draft the quarterback argument aside. I think most people agree with that it's kind of BS. They haven't gotten a chance to draft their own quarterback, develop their own quarterback. But the idea that they finally built in the trenches, they finally built a solid offensive line, they finally established what the Giants have been so good at establishing in their franchise history, which is defensive line and pass rush. They finally did that. Terrific. They hit on multiple guys in this draft. 4 guys in this draft. Terrific. So now we're just going to cut this off. We're just going to say, okay, you know what? You screwed up on Daniel Jones 2.5 years ago. We're not going to let you draft your own quarterback. It makes no sense. Results aside this year, you got to give them a chance to go out there and get their own quarterback and develop their own quarterback. I don't think there's any other argument to be made unless you're catastrophizing things, unless you're falling victim to the disappointment that this year was. When realistically, Shaun, most of us were expecting a season not this bad, but considering how bad Daniel Jones has played, this was never out of the question. Yeah, 2-8.
Now, I want to punt on the other questions. I'm going to be very transparent with the audience. I think I might have had some bad eggs. Okay, so we're going to have to get through this fantasy versus reality situation. All right? If The reality of the situation is I have to go to the bathroom. So we're a half an hour into the pod. Please keep the questions coming at Shaun Morash and at Bryce Gelman. We'll continue to read them. Fantasy versus reality. Humana. Here we go. We're back from the bye week. Here's my fantasy play. Malik freaking Neighbors.
Yeah.
I have a quarterback who's going to get rid of the ball and look to throw as quickly as possible. And Malik freaking Neighbors, I am sure Tommy DeVito has been sitting there going, this guy's good. This guy's really good as he watches every game. And I think he's going to feed Malik Neighbors in this game versus the Bucs. I think he's not going to be afraid. And look, I just think that the Giants, no matter what, are just going to get off more passing plays in this game. I think, there might be a couple sacks there with DeVito drives you nuts, but he releases the ball quicker than Daniel Jones, and that's going to result in 4 to 5 more passing plays, and that might result to another touchdown in this game. That might result to just more looks Malik Neighbors' way. I'm going to hold off on like the Hyatt/Slayton stuff because Slayton, coming back from the concussion, working his way back. Hyatt's only 100-yard receiving game came with Tommy DeVito playing. I just don't know what this secondary wide receiver look, because Slayton was such a Jones guy, is going to be with Tommy DeVito. So I'm holding off there. But we know Malik Neighbors is a guy, and Wan'Dale's there in the slot too. Malik Neighbors is a guy that I think off this bye week, fresh legs, getting over that rookie wall, I think DeVito's just going to find him. So that's my fantasy play. The reality of the game, how can the Giants win this game? I think we forget the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are a good team. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, though, are on a crazy losing streak themselves. Yep. They've run into a lot of problems. They lost Godwin to an injury. Mike Evans is going to come back this week, which is so huge for them. He's obviously so important. I think he's going to obviously eat over the Giants secondary. So I don't even think the reality is slowing down Mike Evans. I think Mike Evans is going to have a great game. The reality comes back to everything that's killed the Giants in recent weeks. Don't let, any of these, whether it's Bucky Irving, whatever the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to do on the ground, do not let them go rush for over 100 yards in this game. You had those 3 big plays with Hubbard in Germany that killed the Giants. You've had a week to kind of figure this stuff out. Bowen has as well. Tape, shut down the run game. Look, Baker Mayfield's going to make his plays through the air. Do not let them churn yards out on the ground and kill them on the ground. I don't think that's actually stretching the notion of what the Giants need to do in the reality of this game. What I think happens, I think the Giants are going to lose on Sunday. I think it'll be a fun loss. I think you're going to have a couple wacky plays. You're going, oh my God, are they going to win this game? I think ultimately Mike Evans makes a couple plays. You're probably screaming about Deonte Banks after the game. And I think the Giants defense surrenders like 24 points in this game, and the Giants lose a game. I think it's close. They'll probably cover the spread. I think the Giants lose a game like 24-20. They get a couple touchdowns in this game, couple field goals. And the spread is right around 4.5, something like that. So it's going to be in that range. I'm going to go 24-20 Bucks, but a fun 24-20 where you walk away going, they lost, but DeVito makes them fun. That's kind of where I think the game is going. And spoiler alert, I'm probably going to lean that they're going to beat Dallas, but we'll talk about that next week.
Yeah. All right. So my fantasy play for Sunday is Theo Johnson. I like the idea of trusting a tight end with a younger quarterback. Younger quarterbacks look to the tight end. That's their safety valve. For whatever reason, that's the case. And I think Tommy DeVito in his first game back is going to face the pressure of the fans, of the media, because there was a run last year and he did do some great stuff. And I think fans are going to expect the same of him. And when pressure is high, young quarterbacks, for whatever reason, I don't know why, they look to their tight ends. And Theo Johnson's obviously got a lot to prove. He's never, he's had some big moments. He's had a few huge drops this year. And I think he's just going to continue building on what was a good week the last time the Giants played. So I think that the reality of this game, the Giants win this game if they exploit the Buccaneers secondary, which is known to be one of the worst in the league. I think that Tommy DeVito is going to need to move the ball well throughout the air. I think the Buccaneers offense is going to get what they want. We've seen it. It remains to be seen whether or not this Giants defense is going to buy back in. Maybe the return of Kayvon Thibodeau is going to give them the juice they need to get through this game. Maybe the starting of Tommy DeVito and the benching of Daniel Jones is going to be enough to get Dexter Lawrence going. I don't know. We have no idea yet. We don't know. We know what we hear. We know what we see when it comes to these reports, but we gotta see it out on the field. So that's why I'm not going to really say anything about the Giants defense. I don't really know. I don't. But as long as you're able to move the ball well in this game, you'll have a chance. That's really what I think. And I think eventually this game comes down to a 2-minute drive from Baker Mayfield, scores a touchdown to win the game. I think that the Buccaneers win this game 20-13. I'm praying the Giants lose this game. I know people out there are going to be pissed that I'm saying that, but I don't care at this point.
No, you need the quarterback.
I get it. And I'm not gonna fault you for rooting for your team and wanting them to win. I get it, but then don't complain when the Giants lose out on a top 5 pick. I think they lose this game. And I know we're going to talk about the Cowboys. I think they win that game, though. But this game, for the Buccaneers at 4-6, they need this game so much more than the Giants need it. No matter what manufactured reasons there are out there, the Giants need to win this game. We know at 2-8, it doesn't matter if they win or lose. If they lose, okay, great. They have a better draft standing. Okay. The Bucs at 4-6, and as bad as an NFC as it is this year, they need to win this game if they want to stay in the hunt. So, 2013.
All right. Bryce, I have sweat dripping from my forehead. I got to go to the bathroom. So we're going to wrap One Giant Step here. Thanks for downloading, subscribing everywhere podcasts are available. We'll be back with a recap episode. Bryce, oh boy, just text me. I got to go. Thanks, everybody, for downloading, subscribing.